Can you see me now? So this is the second day in a row that the fabulous wind has even allowed me to go outside. You have no idea what it's been like for the last, let's just say it, this winter has been hard. So, but it's given me lots of time to think, and well, that's what this video is. It's the result of a lot of thinking, deep thinking. So I had to do it audio, voiceover, because I can't be outside and think, even though it's not rattlesnake season. Still got the dog. So I hope you'll take a moment to listen. I invite you to close your eyes while you listen to the audio, because this is really a topic that you need to feel your way through and not just intellectually think about. I believe it's the next phase of, I know what I'm working on. It's sort of a step beyond the idea of respect. That was sort of the path that was getting me closer to these ideas. And it's not something that I've seen talked about. So I'm really coining it emotional maturity, because I don't think it's something that you can even possess when you're young. It's a degree thing. I think it takes life experience. And I think it's way bigger than even I'm ready to think about it right now. So with that, I think it's the next part of this discussion as we figure out how to stay human. Part of what I believe is why we are human is to develop the emotional maturity to let this life and this world go. So with that, we're going to take a deep breath. We're going to run some graphics while you listen, and I will see you on the other side. Freedom, it's been a while. Do you want to say hi? It's been a while since you've been on camera. If you're really old, you'll remember Neil Sedaka saying, breaking up is hard to do. I think growing up is way harder. That's just my opinion. So let's dive right in. What is the difference between emotional maturity and emotional intelligence? It was quite a while ago when we saw that idea of EQ come forward, and it was really a discussion about how intellectual intelligence just wasn't enough to be successful in the world. It was shortened to the idea we call EQ versus IQ. And, well, I'm not going to go into a lot about that because, number one, it's been a really long time since I've read that book. And two, this is something different that I'm trying to talk about. But I want to discern between emotional maturity and emotional intelligence by just saying that emotional intelligence, we're just going to talk about that as both understanding and navigating through our emotions intelligently, meaning they're not running us, but they're part of us. We haven't dismissed them, but we understand there's more to life than just knowing the right answer. So before we take the next step and truly trying to understand what is emotional maturity, I'm going to invite you once again to just pause, close your eyes, and listen to the rest of this information, because emotional maturity is really tied in with a sense of knowing as feeling. We can see it in our behavior, in our actions. We know we're on target by the way we feel. And part of our ability to manage ourselves emotionally is through our nervous system. So the healthier your nervous system is, the more you're able to move back and forth between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic, and you understand the power of your gut, your enteric nervous system. You'll get a better handle about how to feel your way through this process of defining for yourself what you believe would be emotional maturity. But before we even get there, we have to make that decision. Do I even want to be emotionally mature? And, well, if you live in Western civilization, the answer is no. Nothing about our world, our culture, our beliefs, our feelings, our actions, or our behaviors, for the most part, represent anything to do with emotional maturity. And from a psychological perspective, I would say it's sort of when like the ego is having a temper tantrum and trying to run the show, which is how we live our lives in this world. We look at the short term, not the long term. It's how is it going to affect me? I don't care about anybody else. It's making decisions without dealing with what the consequences might be.
not just to us, but to everybody else. It's taking the decision of how we are in this world to a new level because we're beginning to understand the way it's been going isn't working. And as we look around, and so many of us are struck by the horror of what's actually been going on because we've been emotionally checked out from the consequences of not paying attention, from our own health to our children to just people we don't even know who are suffering tremendously. It's a rude awakening. So I just want to run through a little bit about where I'm calling this emotional maturity idea into play. And probably the biggest thing is that you don't get your way. It's not about getting what you want, when you want, and how you want it. If you can visualize the temper tantrum of a 2-year-old, many of us are still acting like that, only we're saying, we want God to take care of us, we want the government to take care of us, we want a romantic partner to take care of us, we want our children to take care of us. We're having temper tantrums about the fact that the world isn't giving us what we want the way we want it. So, step 1 in emotional maturity is the understanding that we are not in this world to get what we want, when we want, and how we want. That's just real. Whether you want it to be or not is a whole separate issue. The other thing I want to talk about that with is that there's this idea that a lot of people were waking up, right? Oh, I've ascended. Oh, I've been red pilled. Oh, I'm out of the matrix. Well, here's emotional immaturity. No, you're not, because there is no absolute truth that the human mind in this experience can understand. This process never ends. And that's part of that emotional maturity is there is no ending place. It's always going to be process, because if we had it all down, if we were perfect, if we knew everything, if we were smart and we just had it all put together, what would be the reason for coming into the world? And so that part of that emotional maturity is understanding that we're not here to be perfect. We're here to grow and become something that we didn't come into the world as. The entire learning curve of our life should be moving us towards something. And the expectation that young people are supposed to have it all together and look how silly and stupid they are is the same conversation that our elders had about us. So it's that stepping back and understanding that you're in part of a process. There is no final outcome, and that just is okay. That's us making peace with that idea that it's just okay. The other thing I wanted to say about it, and as I'm looking at everything I wrote down, I'm realizing it's way too long to cover here. So the next thing I wanted to cover was emotional intelligence will be met with, emotional maturity will be met with grief, not celebration, because it's in the willingness to let go to all the things that we need to let go of. It's just exhausting, this list of letting go. But it's met with letting go, and there's a grieving process when we let go. I talk about letting go is also appreciation, as we can appreciate how far we've come, but to try to pretend like there's not a grief around what we've lost, I think is an immature position, or it's a denial, disassociation. It's very hard to let go of the dreams and fantasies and wishful thinking that so many of us still have in this world, because we live in a world where we're told we can have anything. The whole mantra is anything you want, when you want, however you want. As long as you can pay for it, you can get it. And emotional maturity understands that with every decision, there is a consequence. And the unwillingness to acknowledge that that is true is a childlike state of being. Children don't understand fire until they stick their hand in the flame, and there's a reason it hurts, which takes me to the next thing, is that part of emotional maturity is the understanding that suffering and loss are necessary components of this human life. Most of us want to ease our suffering and pain and ease the pain and suffering of everyone and everything. But emotional maturity requires us to grow up and understand that sometimes we need to suffer, because if we didn't, like that child putting its hand in the flame, there would be no lesson learned. We feel pain, we feel fear, we feel anxiety. All those things serve a purpose and are I don't know what the word I want to use, but this insanity around trying to not feel anything is what gets us all in trouble, because the reality is, as we learn the lesson from pain much more quickly than we do from comfort and safety. Whether how long we choose to hold on to that pain and suffering is individual, and it can be endless. But it is all our power to learn. Really, usually comes from it hurts. I want it to stop hurting. What do I need to do to make it stop hurting? And that's the emotionally mature conversation. It's not the avoidance of all pain and loss and suffering. It's the willingness that sometimes you have to do something that hurts, like having a baby. If you want to have a baby, it's going to hurt. But that's the mature decision, is to say, okay, well, I'm willing to do that to get this, to delay gratification, to put my feet through the fire to get where I want to go. These are the decisions that the emotionally mature person is willing to make. It is choosing reality over wishful thinking. It's the ability to look at the truth even if we don't want to know it. It's the willingness to understand that belief and perception and our feelings are not necessarily facts. And even facts in this world are becoming questionable, as what we see and what we hear can't be trusted anymore. It's the understanding that what is true and real is getting more and more difficult to figure out. And emotional maturity understands that the feelings are just information. They're a tool. They're a skill set to navigate what's happening in this world. They're not feelings aren't something that we're entitled to have, that are more important than anything or anybody else, that the world can suffer because we have our feelings hurt, that we need to be heard every time our feelings are hurt. We're operating from this idea that feelings have become the most important thing, that they're real, that there's something we're entitled to, and that it's healthy to share every single feeling we have. But if you're on the receiving end of some of those feelings, you kind of know that's not necessarily true. I don't need to know why you hate me, because that's a conversation that cannot be unsaid. Emotional maturity understands when it's time to share and when it's time to just shut up and let the feeling pass. And that brings me to the last thing I want to talk about, even though I got a big old long list here, is sometimes emotional maturity is to seek to understand, not needing to be right. And sometimes emotional maturity is knowing that you're right and not caring if anybody else understands. And, that's a tricky subject, and it's something that you have to think about, because sometimes we know what our truth is and everybody wants to tell us that we're wrong. Sometimes we're just way wrong and we're not interested in what anybody else has to tell us. And we have to be able to understand that fluid, flexible, agile decision, that it's not absolute, that sometimes we need to hold on and sometimes we need to let go. And so that's just an introductory conversation in terms of this idea about what the difference between emotional maturity and emotional intelligence is, and that how part of aging is the understanding that part of what we're gathering as our bodies fade a little bit, we're much more powerful both mentally and emotionally, if that's a decision that we want to make. So thank you for listening. And with that, I'm going to see you in a moment in real time with video. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little thinking process. So again, I invite you to listen to it and think about it with your eyes closed. It's a huge topic. I couldn't get through everything that I had because I realized it's just way too much information. But we're just going to go slow because there's no hurry. And I'm just going to keep talking to you. I think right now what I feel like is the best way to do these videos and to communicate is to just share with you some of these ideas in as conversational way as I can, because I'm still processing a lot of this big stuff. I'm trying to get physical things done. I can't do everything and be everything in all ways. So I'm having to narrow my field, and right now that's these simple videos. So they're great big ideas. It's something just to take a deep breath, think a little bit about, and it's definitely for those of us who are not getting any younger. I wouldn't want to be emotionally mature when I'm 20, because, well,
I wouldn't have learned anything. If I wasn't stupid, I wouldn't be making stupid decisions that teach me the difference between one and the other. So thank you for spending this time with me. If you're really interested in any of this stuff, I hope you'll subscribe, because I don't know how to find you guys. We need to find each other. Those of us who want to think big about the deep stuff, we are here. So with that, my friends, I will see you next time.